Bethesda's much anticipated title Doom will finally launch this May, but before that we got our hands on the beta versions of the PS4, Xbox One, and PC builds. Running on id Tech 6, the developers have set some hefty goals for the console versions. The game targets a full 1080p and 60 FPS standard on the PS4 and Xbox One. So does it manage to achieve that? Before we jump into analyzing all three versions, there are a couple of things that need to be mentioned. First of all, this is a beta, so what we mention here may not apply to the retail version. Things can always change in the final version, but analyzing pre-release builds helps all of us understand how things are moving forward development-wise. Secondly, we will only be taking a brief look at all three platforms, so this isn't going to be a full-fledged performance analysis like we usually do. So without further ado, let's jump right in. The PS4 version runs at a dynamic resolution, varying between 1600 and 1080 to 1920 by 1080. The frame rate drops when a lot of alpha effects are present at one time. The Xbox One version also uses a dynamic resolution which varies between 1350 and 1080 to 1920 by 1080p resolution. As far as performance goes, it's the PS4 version that manages to hold a stable 60 FPS most of the time. This isn't to say that it doesn't drop. It definitely drops, but compared to the Xbox One, it's far more stable. Both versions also suffer from screen tearing when the game's engine runs out of resources in order to render a consistent 60 FPS. Furthermore, the trademark id Tech texture streaming issue has returned. Although it isn't as bad as Rage, it can definitely be noticed in the console versions. Surprisingly, the console versions also have a few graphical parameters that you can tweak. These include chromatic aberration and motion blur. Switching over to the PC version, the developer recommends an Intel Core i7-3770 or AMD FX 8350 and an NVIDIA GeForce GTX 974GB or an AMD Radeon R9 294GB along with 8GB of memory. We tested the game on an NVIDIA GeForce GTX 980 Ti along with an Intel Core i7-3770 and had next to no issues running the game at a locked 60 frames per second. Obviously we're using a high-end card for this analysis, so expect more benchmarks when our full analysis goes live next month. At this point, we are slightly worried about the Xbox One version, especially with regards to the single player. Will Doom run at 1080p and 60 FPS in the single player, a mode which will have far more complexities? We'll have to wait and see. The developer may trade off between resolution and FPS targets just like what Naughty Dog did with Uncharted 4: A Thief's End single player and multiplayer components. We'll be back with a full analysis of all three versions when the game launches next month.
If you like what we're doing, please go ahead and click that subscribe button. See you soon!